Now, before we get started, I do want to say that this is actually going to be, so I'm working with Camtasia Studio. Camtasia Studio 2020 is the latest version. It was released just about a month ago. If you don't have it installed, it is free for all staff and faculty. Just go ahead and fill out the software form, and if not, if you don't have that yet, I can provide that at the end. The videos that we're working with, however, are not dependent upon WebEx. So whether, WebEx is, of course, the tool that we currently subscribe to at the university, but I do know several people are using Zoom accounts. Some might be using GoToMeeting, others might just be recording their webcams as a lecture and putting it up on D2L or elsewhere. So how you get your video is not at all relevant for today's class. It's all about editing the video afterwards. The only thing I will mention and start is if the platform that you're using provides you any kind of a choice, that you should record in a format that's MP4. And MP4 is a format that is easily read by Camtasia, actually by all software editing, or all editing software, sorry. Easy to use, it's compressed, so it's a smaller file size. And then that'll be the one that's easiest to work with. And pretty much by default, that will be the format, but just in case, you want to just make sure that that's what you're recording in. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. So the way, there we go. So basics of editing video is today's class. Again, I don't think we'll take the full 2 hours, but just in case we have it, we're going to talk about how to import that original video that you've recorded. We're going to walk through the Camtasia Studio interface. We'll talk about what's referred to as initial or bulk editing. And then that's where we'll introduce concepts like a video timeline, working with some audio and basic trims. By the way, like I said, we are using Camtasia Studio, but because this is basics, if you are using any other software, a lot of these will still apply. Because the way we work with video, whether we're working in Camtasia Studio, Premiere Pro, Premiere Rush, Final Cut, in case any of you folks are on Macs, the concepts of working with video are still the same. So the location of these tools might be different in different applications, but the basic way of working with them remains the same. Then we'll move on to targeted or secondary edits. So if you want to put in annotations, we talk about secondary tracks, behaviors, transitions. We move to adding outro screens and intro screens and additional short videos, as well as transitions. And we cover all the meanings of those words as we come to them. And then, of course, how to export the final video so that you can put it up onto either D2L, or some people do have a YouTube or a Vimeo website that they want to put their materials onto, or, of course, the university's website. So that's what we're going to cover today. Before you begin working with your video, just 3 things I would tell you to be aware of. Number 1, of course, download and install Camtasia Studio. And when you fill out that software request form, you'll get an automatic email reply, and in that email reply will be both the download location and the software license key for Camtasia. So once you fill it out, you'll be able to do that as self-service. I always tell people, have your videos in an accessible location. What I mean by that is, if you're working with something like Zoom or recording off of your laptop, I always say now try and save those videos into OneDrive. OneDrive has an enormous amount of space to store items in. And as long as you have internet connection, you will be able to access that video. So instead of putting it on an S drive or an H drive and then working from home, like we all have been, where accessing that becomes a little more difficult, keep it in OneDrive or keep it on your laptop. That's kind of a backup if necessary, but again, OneDrive would be our strong recommendation because, of course, it's also backed up. Finally, if you're going to add other media, so if you're going to download something from YouTube or Vimeo, or you're going to grab other screenshots and images, Please be aware of copyright laws. So just a reminder that just because it's on the internet does not mean it's free to use. If you are looking for some royalty-free and free-to-use images and some basic videos, there are some resources available that you can use and still be within the rights to use. And if you have any questions on that, please feel free to send me an email and I can work with you on where to find those resources. All right. Well, now we're going to meet Camtasia Studio. So we're going to delve right into the software right now. So now we're going to move over here and I'm going to share this screen here. So this is Camtasia Studio, and if you've never worked with a video editing platform before, this might look a little daunting and intimidating because where do we start? Well, the first place to start, of course, is to learn what the interface is, and we can break all this down into 4 sections. So the first section is over here on the left, and you can see the navigation on the left-hand side where it says Media, Library, Favorites, Annotations, Transitions, and so forth, all the way down to Captions. Then over here where it says Library. So that is our tool bin, and that's where we can import and add a variety of different elements and resources to our video, but that's what we refer to as the tool bin. Some people might refer to it as a library as well, depending upon the application. Camtasia, we call that the tool bin. Big black screen over here, that is called our canvas. That is actually our preview window. So as we're working with our video and we want to see what the changes we're making look like, we can preview it in here. So we can play sections of the video, we can play the entire video, and check what our work is looking like. Over on the right-hand side right now, where it's empty, that is our properties panel. So as we add items, whether it's the main video itself, or we're adding annotations or behaviors or graphics or images or shapes, and so forth and so forth and so forth, the properties panel will dynamically change so we can see the properties of whatever little item that we are currently working on. And finally, the most important part and most perplexing for a lot of people is this bottom section, and that's called the timeline. So the timeline is key to working with video. If you're not aware, all a video really is a series of still pictures. So just like Beth accused me of claiming I was old earlier, and I'll go back to that and say, for those of us who used to work with actual film strips, if you looked at a film strip or a movie strip, you saw a series of still pictures, and those pictures were shot at a certain what's called a frame rate. So a number of frames are shot per second. And then when we play those back, we play them also at a frame rate. So movies are traditionally shot at 24 frames per second, and then they're played back actually at 72, 3 times the speed. But nonetheless, those are all a series of still pictures just shot at a certain rate, at a constant rate. Digital video is the exact same thing. Digital video is just a series of still pictures. And as they're spliced together and they're played constantly, we get the video. So down here on this timeline, we're going to drop that video, but what we're really seeing are all the still images that comprise that video. From the timeline, we can move around, jump around to parts of video. That's where we can find the spots where we're going to add all of our extra stuff. So, high level, we have our tool bin in the upper left. We have our canvas in the middle. We have the properties panel over on the right, and along the bottom, we have the timeline. So the first thing we're going to do is I need to import the video. So any video that already exists that I want to bring into my my project here is referred to as media. So I'm going to click on media in the upper left, and right away you can see that first of all I have nothing in here, but I also have a button that says import media. So I'm going to click import media, and I just happen to have my MP4 from a WebEx I did a couple months ago on how to set up your personal room. So I'm just going to double click that. I'm going to import the media. You see it's taking a few moments to download and prepare. Now by doing this, all I'm doing is I'm making that media available on this project.
Hey, Rob, while that's downloading, can I ask a quick question? Can Camtasia be used for recording video as well, or is it just for editing?
Yeah. No, you can absolutely record as well. As a matter of fact, you see a button up here that says record. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. That'll be a good segue. This is where someone says, what's a segue? And I get to say 5 pounds. Oh, okay, apparently my dog didn't like that question or joke. All right, so it's downloaded now. So the video is now available to the project. And by the way, that's what we call the whole video that we're working on. It's referred to as a project. So the video is available. I've brought it into the media bin, but it's not yet inserted into the project. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click and I'm going to drag it down to track 1. Slide all the way to the left, and there's my video. Now you see I got track 1, I've got track 2. I can actually layer different tracks. So what those tracks mean is if we think about an overhead projector with acetate or transparency sheets. Remember when we wanted to do something really creative, we'd put a second or third or fourth transparency sheet on, we draw on top, and that's how we'd create like a layered view on an overhead projector. This is actually very similar. So track 1, that's your base layer. That's where the main video is going to lie. Now, when we add annotations or a lower third or any other notes or graphics or shapes, they'll go on tracks 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and we basically build it up. So track 1 always is going to hold that first video. And as we add some things later on, we'll see how that works. Now, now that we've brought in the first piece of media, the main video, you'll see over in the canvas, that's the start of the video. So when this class started and I hit record, that's the first thing that it saw. Down here, if you see that the media has a yellow box around it, that's because it is the selected item. So if I click off that, it's no longer selected and the properties panel is empty. But the moment I click back on that, I'm seeing the properties for that item. Okay. Now, let's go back to the timeline. So we've already talked about track 1 and track 2. You'll see what is basically a ruler, but instead of measuring distance, we're measuring time. So because this is a longer video, these are marked off in seconds. So this is the 30-second mark. Here's the 1-minute mark, and so forth. How I get there, over here in the right, I'm going to pull it off to the side a little bit here. I've got this little image right here, and it actually looks like a home plate in baseball. That's called my playhead. You see it's got a line going down straight through all the tracks right down to the bottom. So remember when I said that a video is basically a series of still images? So what that playhead, or what that line is pointing to, is the specific still, or the specific image in the video. And as I drag that playhead around, eventually, looks like I need to slide over a little bit. So you can see I didn't do much for the first little bit. There's a lot of boring stuff going on here. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. There we go. Now, as I move my playhead around, of course, I slide it, now you're seeing the video in the canvas start to change. So the reason it didn't change for the first 7 minutes and looks like 45 plus seconds is because I was just talking and we weren't doing anything. That's a really boring part of the video, 7 minutes and 45 seconds that I don't need. So obviously we need to trim that. And right now, over here at the bottom of the canvas, you can see I'm at the 7 minute 44 mark with a total of 42 minutes and 1 second in the video. So we're going to come back in a moment and that's going to be our first trim, but we're going to come all the way back here to the beginning. By the way, if I need to get the playhead to a specific area, I can just click on the timeline and it'll jump right back to where it is, and then I can slide back down to the start. So that is my playhead. And that, again, that lets me point to any specific frame in the whole video. And that's going to become key as we start to do our edits. You'll notice also below the canvas, I have a play button, so I can hit play, and it's going to start walking through and playing my video. Slide it back. Now, beside, to the left and to the right of that playhead graphic, you'll see a green square and a red square. That is my selection tool. So if I want to select a portion of this, I can click and drag the red. Then I can move my playhead around inside of there. That's the start and the end of my selection. So that's what the red and green marks are for. Now, typically I don't work with that. I prefer just to position my playhead where I need it to and work from there. And that's the interface. Now, as you can see, this is, like I said, it's 42 minutes in length, but we're going to trim a lot of that. But my scroll bar down here, I got to do a lot of scrolling. What I can do initially is I can come up here to the zoom on the timeline, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And as I do that, what happens is you can see the scroll bar is longer, which means I don't have to scroll as much. The increments on the timeline have changed. Now, instead of showing every 10 seconds, it's now showing every minute. At the 3 minute mark, the 4 minute, I can still go in between them, but it's going to be hard to be precise. But it allows me to easily find a space on my video. The last thing I want to show you before we get working is you'll notice all of a sudden I got these vertical squiggly lines. I got large swaths of my video where it doesn't have that. But then all of a sudden I start getting these. That's referred to as a waveform, and that signifies that there's audio going on. So where you don't see any of this, that means it's silent. I'm either on mute, no one's talking, but there's no audio at all being played or that was recorded at that time. So if there's no audio, that's my first visual cue. So now we're going to get in, we're going to start trimming this. That's my first cue that I probably don't need any of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my playhead. So now we're doing what was referred to as the bulk edits. And bulk edits always start with your trims. So I'm going to come all the way down here, about where the voice starts. But I remember I was doing some introductory talking, before I actually started the presentation. So now what I can do is I can zoom back in a little bit. And you can see again, I've got these gaps, which will pop up when it show up. Oh, wait a sec. So you got these little audio gaps. So that tells me that that's a gap of about 10 seconds. So chances are nothing going on there. So I can slide back down there. Okay, now I'm moving over and I can position this right before the start of the audio. Now we'll just slide this so it's a little more centered. So that's where my audio starts, because I can see that I've got this big gap here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. I don't actually want to get this. You see in the canvas where you see I'm switching over to the PowerPoint presentation. I don't actually need that. I want to start right where it moves to, like somewhere around there. Well, now the easiest way, the most precise way to move is I'm going to go back to my canvas tools. And I'm going to use, looks like a fast forward button, but really all that is it's going to jump to the next frame. Because remember, video is just a series of still pictures. This allows me to move one frame or one still picture at a time. There we go. Now that allows me to find my start. There's still a little bit of silence, but that's okay. I want a little bit of silence before I start talking because no one likes a video that just starts and the person's talking immediately. Looks like there's about 2 or 3 seconds of quiet before I start talking. That's exactly what I want. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of all of this stuff to the left of that playhead. So I'm going to click on the playhead click on the media to select it and see my yellow box. I'm going to come to my split icon right here. And all it does is it splits the selected media where the playhead is. So I click on that. And now you can see I have 2 separate pieces of media. Now, in terms of actually playing this, if I was to start playing this back right now, there'd be no jump, there'd be no skip. It would be as seamless as everything else. All I did was I just cut in between 2 of those still pictures. But if I was just to produce this video as is, you would have no clue that there's a split right there. But I want to get rid of this. So now, with that left-hand side collected or selected, I'm just going to hit my delete key on the keyboard, and it goes away. I'm going to zoom out a little bit again. But what I'm left with now is a whole bunch of dead space for 7 minutes and 50 seconds. And if I was to save this just as is, I would still have a 42-minute video, but instead of having a boring picture of my WebEx screen, it would just be black. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click once to select the remaining portion of the video, and then click and I'm going to drag it all the way back to the front. Now we go back to the canvas. And the playhead is still at the 7-minute 50 mark. That's why it still says 750. If I click back here and just bring it all the way back, 0. But now I just went from 42 minutes to 34 minutes and 10 seconds. So I actually got rid of 7 minutes and 50 seconds worth of dead air. And right away, our students will be happy with us. All right, so with that done, so now I've done my basic edit, my first basic edit. I've trimmed the beginning, but I also want to trim the end. So now I'm going to take the slide all the way to the end. And you see I've got some dead spots here as well. So I'm just going to click up on the timeline to have my playhead jump over. And sure enough, I got a whole bunch of stuff I don't need. So we're going to slide back, more support. Well, I still want to scroll in a little bit because I do want to cut somewhere where the audio is silent. So now I'm just going to move back a couple frames. Make sure, there we go. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to make sure that media is selected, which it is. I'm going to come to my split tool. Now I've split it left and right, but this time I want to get rid of what's on the right of the playhead. So I select that. And again, I hit the delete key on the keyboard. And now we've taken that 42-minute video and I've gotten rid of 12 minutes. 12 minutes at the beginning and the end. So I'm going to slide all the way back to the beginning. And now I have the basic video length. I've trimmed the front, I've trimmed the end, I've gotten my 42 minutes down to 30 minutes. Now would be, since I'm working on Windows, now would be a really good time to save my project. So I'm just going to File, I'm going to save it. Go over to OneDrive, to Train Materials. So this is just a location where I'm saving it. Give it a name. Call this the trimming sample. Now, before I hit save, you'll notice under Save as Type, it says Camtasia Project, and it's TSC PROG. So TSC just stands for TechSmith, that's the name of the company, TechSmith Camtasia Project. So when we save a project, now go ahead and hit save. Once I've saved the project, it saves the information about it. So it's going to remember where the original video was saved. It's going to remember that I imported it. It's going to remember that I cut it. So I haven't created my final video yet. I'm still adding pieces, but I'm going to save it as I go along because it's Windows, and for our own sanity, save early, save often. So I save my project. By the way, you cannot share your project. So once you're done all your edits, you can't send off the TSC PROJ file because that can't be read by anything. We do need to export it as an MP4. So just be aware that saving the project and exporting your final video are different. We'll talk about it at the end. But still, you want to make sure that you're saving on a fairly regular basis. Nothing is worse than spending a couple hours on getting a video finally tuned to where you want it to be, and then all of a sudden something goes wrong and you realize you didn't save your project. See, I told you that there's a good chance that I would miss questions in chat, and I just happened to see the one from Paula, who asked, when saving to OneDrive, is this only available when you're logged in remotely to VPN? Actually, that is not correct. That's one of the advantages of OneDrive. You do not have to be logged in. As long as you have internet access, you can log into OneDrive. And you can either do it from the browser, just go to office.com and log in with your Benedictine credentials, or if you are on a Windows 10 machine, OneDrive is automatically added to File Explorer. So once you've logged in and on there, then OneDrive just basically becomes just another drive folder that you can save to. All right, so we have our bulk edits. So the next thing I'd like to do, if I was just to play this, and my playhead is at the 0 mark, if I just click play, I'm not sure if people were able to hear that or not. I don't think I can change that at this point. It's kind of a harsh start. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to add what's referred to as a transition. So I want to fade into the video. Again, it's one of those small little things that just adds a little bit of visual interest and isn't such a jarring start to the video. So I'm going to come over to my my library over here, my tool bin, and I'm going to click on transitions. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to add a couple annotations, and we're going to add some behaviors to those annotations, and then I'll explain the difference between behaviors and transitions. But for now, I've got all these cool little actions, and if I just hover my mouse on them, I see what it looks like. Most of which just looks like someone learned how to throw together a video. I'm not a big fan. My favorites are actually fade and fade through black. So I really like beginning with a fade through black. So I'm just going to click, I'm going to drag it onto my media. So now you can see the canvas has gone black, but there's a little kind of translucent green box at the beginning. Now when I hit play, watch the canvas. So you can see how it kind of fades in, and it's kind of a nicer start. Now we are going to do that at the end, but not until we do something else first. So I'm going to leave that for now. But let's talk about this transition. So when I click on the media itself over on my properties panel, we can see properties about the video itself. But when I click on the actual transition and that's selected, we get the properties for the transition. This is actually, if I wanted to change the type of transition, I could, but we're just going to leave that as is. So that's a transition. It moves us from one clip to another clip, and although we don't have an initial clip, but we're moving into a brand new clip, so we are transitioning into that clip, so we use a transition. And as you can see, Camtasia 2020 does in fact come with several different types of transitions. And I would say feel free to explore, because if you add the wrong transition, or not so much a wrong transition, but if you add a transition that you don't like, all I have to do is click the transition itself to select it. Do not click the media, but click the transition itself and hit delete. And then you can add in the one that you really want. And that's our first transition. Now what I want to do is I want to add annotations. So once in a while, you might have something come up where you want to add a little bit more information on the screen. How do we do that? So we're just going to slide media bin here. We're going to zoom out a little bit, make it a little faster to find. So in this video, I'm talking about how to set up your personal room. I'm talking about adding an alternate host. Now, I really want to highlight this alternate host idea. So I'm going to come over to my annotations. And this one's kind of my favorite. I use it a lot. So if you've seen any of the other videos that I create, I'm going to click, I'm going to drag it down. It's going to go onto track number 2 because it sits on top of. Zoom in so I can see it a little bit better. Now, on the canvas, if I drop it onto the timeline so Camtasia knows where to put it in terms of the timing, but its quasi-physical location on the video itself, on the canvas, I can click and I can drag this around. And I'm going to put it like right here. And then the little arrow, I'm just going to pick that up and I'm going to move right here to point. Let go. Then I'm going to expand and then just double click the type to say, this is where you can add alternate hosts. And I've just dropped in an annotation. Now, if you look at the annotations, you have a whole range of types. So this is what's called a callout. And if you change from basic, you can show all of them. You actually have quite a few different styles and colors. You have arrows that you can drop in, basic shapes. Now the difference between a shape and a callout is a shape does not have a text box added to it. So if I want to put text on something, like I did it here, I want to put in a callout because it has both the text frame and the shape itself. We can go special, and I do use special quite a bit. I can blur areas. I can spotlight, highlight, and pixelate. So in some cases, if I'm doing a video and I have something on the screen, not kind of my, not part of the class I'm trying to highlight, but I just happen to have something on the screen and I need to hide it, then I can either pixelate or blur it. And I'll just show you really quickly. I can drag the blur onto here, and it blurs the screen. So I've done that where if I've needed to blur out the address bar, sometimes I can do that. I can just pixelate, just drag it up. And of course, I can click and drag that along and blur. I've got some fun little sketch motion annotations here, and those draw automatically, and we'll see that in a few minutes. And I can also put in keyboard strokes. Something we can definitely play with later, but for now I just want to show the callouts and again the blur. Now, by default, a callout when you add it is going to be 5 seconds in length. Sometimes you need it to be longer. That's very simple to do. So I'm just going to right click on the callout itself, and I'm going to go to third from the bottom, duration. And I can change that from 5 seconds. I can put in anything I want. I could even say 15 seconds. Type 15 and hit OK. And now I have a 15 second. I can, by the way, also just grab the end and slide it around. So those two ways that you can lengthen or shorten the duration of the callout. By the way, that also works with blur. So same thing, if I was to put a blur, if I need to hide part of my screen, and I need to hide it for about 20 minutes, I can do that. I just drop that blur callout or annotation, put it where I need it to be, and I put it at the starting point, and then I set the duration for as long as I need to be, and then as long as the video is playing that portion, that section is blurred out. Now, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to keep my annotation selected because the other thing I can do is I can change colors. So like I said, we come back here to all of our callouts. There's different shapes and different colors. Now, being a loyal Benedictine employee, I'm going to use red, but that's not the Benedictine red. So I can actually change that. Now, this is kind of advanced stuff, but I created a Benedictine library for myself. But you can see now I've got the Benedictine red. But yeah, I can click, and I can change the font color. I can change the font face or the typeface, and I can use any of the fonts that are installed on my system. I can adjust vertical and horizontal spacing, the alignment of text, both in terms of left, center, right, and upper and lower. And that's my annotation. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out a little bit. I'm going to hit play. Now, so my callout works. It shows up when I need to. But again, it just kind of all of a sudden it's there and all of a sudden it's gone. We can make that a little smoother. So this is where we're going to use a behavior. And then now I can talk about the difference between behaviors and transitions. So I'm going to come over here to behaviors. And again, I have a whole series to choose from. And if I hold my mouse on top, I'll get a preview of what that does. So for something like this, I like to use the pop-up. That's just my personal preference. So I'm going to click and I'm going to drag the pop-up onto the callout. And I'm going to let go. It says behavior added, but now up here on the, with that selected, up here in the properties panel, I've got this section for my behaviors. And it sets the behavior for in, so as it comes in, while it's showing and as it fades out. Now what that means is I'm going to pull back here, hit play again. Now watch the call out. So in almost every instance, I find that the call out moving around while I'm trying to read it is really distracting and I don't like it. So as long as it's selected, I'm going to come where it says during, and I'm going to change the style to none. Let's hit play. So it pops up and folds down. So that's a behavior. Behaviors apply to the specific item that it's attached to. So in this case, it's attached to, I'm applying it to the callout. So the behavior affects how the callout appears, how it behaves while it's showing, and then how it disappears or how it leaves. Back here, I'm going to click on my in again. So we're using the hinge cell. The thing I will change occasionally is the direction. So because this is near the top, instead of it kind of folding up from the bottom, I'm going to change it to the top. And then on the way out, it falls down. I'm going to have it sweep off to the right. So I'll just change that. Now let's take a look at how this behavior affects the callout. Drops down. Folds away. So that's a behavior. So like I said, behavior affects just the item that it's been applied to. The transition, which we'll take a look at now, actually not now, we'll do that in a second. The transition though is how we move from one clip to a second clip. In this case, the callout is actually a clip. It's a short one, it's about 5 seconds, but it's stacked. So we're not transitioning from the main video to the callout, we're just putting the callout on top. That's why we apply behavior. The next thing I want to add, we're going to come back here near the beginning. So that again is an annotation. Come back to the beginning. I'm going to drop in what's called a lower third. Now, if you don't know what a lower third is, actually you do, you've seen it a lot, you just might not know it by that name. A lower third is just on the bottom of the screen. It's a little piece of information. Often it has the name of the person who's talking or the subject they're talking about. So I'm going to come up to my library. And under the Camtasia 2020, that's a default library that gets installed. We have some lower thirds. So I expand that, and I'm going to take one down here. I don't know. Let's take, let's take Stan. And I have no clue what Stan looks like. But I'm going to click, I'm going to drag it down again. I'm going to put it on track 2. It's going to sit on top. Now, in order for me to see it, I need to drag my playhead onto it a little bit. There it is. Okay, now I actually want it to appear down in that green area. So I'm just going to click on the canvas and drag it down a little bit. There we go. Your designation here. So I'm going to double click designation here, and I'm just going to call it IT department. And down here, Rob, and Mass Chuck. There we go. By the way, again, with that selected, if I select the text, come over to my properties panel, and I can change the text as needed. If I click on this portion up here, I can change background colors, change my text however I want to do it. So I put in my lower third, but what does that look like? Since we're working with video, it doesn't have to appear. Let's just click play and see what it looks like. And I've added my lower third. Now, lower thirds are fantastic for introducing information on screen. They don't necessarily need to draw a lot of attention to, but you want to point something out. So like I said, quite often you see it in news shows where either the person who's speaking their name. So if you have a guest lecture, I know some of you have brought on guest lectures for some of your WebEx sessions, and you've introduced them. But if you want to drop their name, their credentials, where they're from, you can do that beautifully with the lower third when they appear in the video. If you don't have them in video, you just have them on audio, you can get a picture from them and you can import the picture as a piece of media, drop it onto the timeline, onto one of the tracks, set the duration for the length of time that they're speaking, and then drop a lower third again with their name, their title, and any other information that you'd like to add. Joe just asked, actually the question appeared and disappeared pretty quickly, so let me come back here. So Joe asked, does the lower third push the underlying window up or overlay the bottom? It overlays. So that's it's a great question. Yeah, it doesn't push anything around, it overlays, so it's like those transparency sheets and the old overhead projectors. It's just going to build it up. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. This is being recorded, yes.
So, Rob, how do you get, like, you have your PowerPoint slide there on your video, and then you have that blue thing on the bottom, which is kind of nice because then if you put that lower third in, it's not going to be covering up any of the slide, right? If there were more text or whatever. Did you have to put that in when you were originally making the PowerPoint, or is that something that you were able to add in afterward?
Well, I want to say that I took a lot of time in figuring out kind of what the right ratio would be in terms of the amount of space that the PowerPoint took up versus how much space I wanted on the bottom. I'd like to be able to say that, but the reality is, no, that's just an oops moment. My PowerPoint just happened to be set for, that's a 16:9 resolution for anyone who cares, for the wide resolution. But when I ran the presentation through WebEx, it gave me a different resolution on my screen. So it just filled in that blue on its own. There was zero thought. I had no clue that that's going to happen. It just happened to work out for this. So yeah, like I said, I would love to tell you that that was intentional and planned because it worked out so well. But the reality is, no, it wasn't. That was just a happy mistake. It was a Bob Ross happy mistake.
So we have no way of repeating that then. We just have to hope for the same mistake.
You do. When you run a slideshow in PowerPoint, or when you create your PowerPoint deck, you can use a template that has a particular what's called an aspect ratio, which is just a certain number of units wide versus a certain number of units high. So, for example, our old monitors used to be what's called 4:3. So for every 4 units wide, it was 3 units high. Modern high-def video is 16:9. So when I created this presentation, I used a 16:9. But when I did the presentation, my monitor is set for a different resolution just because that's the way my monitor is set. So WebEx actually added that bottom portion in when I did the recording. So you can do it. You're just you have to know what you need to do first. And if you want, Beth, I can kind of figure out what those settings were and email them out later. All right. So we've got a lower third, and like I said, feel free to use them. Try them out. A lower third, it can be static, which just means it just is in and out. And if you just want to have it lay on the screen and, you can use a behavior so it doesn't just suddenly pop up. But the ones that come installed with Camtasia do have some animation already, and I'm going to slide this back here. So I'm going to go to my selected, so it opens up my properties panel. And I don't know if it's going to let me. No, it looks like the, well, I'm going to say for now, no, we can't really change the way it animates. It is what it is. So if you find a lower third that you like, there is some, enough customization where you can change the typeface, you can change some of the colors. But again, go ahead and play with all the different lower thirds. So right now, we've already done a couple of things. We've done our bulk edits, we've trimmed the front and the back. So we've shortened it, we've gotten rid of all the dead space that, especially at the front. Dead space at the beginning or at the end, not as egregious an issue because by that point it's done, people are just going to stop watching. But when you have a lot of dead space at the beginning, now you're going to get people wondering, like, is this actually playing? Am I supposed to be seeing something? The video is broken, right? When in fact all it is just everyone was on mute and I didn't realize it was recording and I had 7 minutes of space at the beginning. So those trims, those initial bulk edits are crucial, especially the one at the front. The second thing we did was we worked on throwing in a basic transition just to kind of gently, from a visual perspective, bring the video in. We added an annotation. Of course, if you watch any of the videos I've created for university for using WebEx or Office or anything else, you see I use a lot of those annotations. I use them a lot because it's a great way to kind of highlight pieces of information. And then if I need to extend it, so whether it's 5 seconds is not enough to read what's in there, or I think it's so important I really want to highlight it, so maybe I make it 7 or 8 seconds. You don't want to make an annotation too long, but on the other hand, you don't want to make it too short. But you have enough wiggle room. So I would say if you're not sure whether it's long enough, go ahead and extend it a little bit longer. Only if you're looking at it afterwards and say, man, that's a really long time, you can go ahead and shorten it. But go ahead and make it longer. And that's our annotation. And then that's our lower third. Now the next thing, again, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to hit Control S to save because we made some changes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide all the way down the end. At the end of my video, I want to put a little call to action, which is basically if you have any questions about this video or need assistance with any other campus platform, please call the IT help desk and put in the number. So I'm going to drop in another thing. It's called an outro screen. So we have intros and we have outros. So again, the videos that I create for the university, I usually use a spinning laptop as my intro. But an outro screen is just that. It's the last screen that we put in. So I'm going to come back to my media, and I need to import something else. So I got a little plus button down here. Now before I do this, just so you know, I created this outro screen, and I've got it saved out on OneDrive, but it's in the same folder, so we're just going to bring that in here. Import media. And it says video outro screen, and all it is just, it's a white screen with the IT logo. I'm going to click, I'm going to drag it, I'm going to put it at the end of the video on track 1. Now if I right click on it, look at the duration, it's 5 seconds. So that's the default. If I bring in any kind of still image or an annotation, 5 seconds is the default. Now, for me to say, for help with setting up your personal room or any other WebEx issues, please call the IT help desk. That's going to take more than 15 seconds or 5 seconds. I always put it for 15, so I'm going to change it to 15 and hit OK. And now I've got a nice long outro screen. Put my playhead in here. That's what it looks like. Well, there's nothing on there. So now what I need to do is I need to put in another annotation. So I'm just going to position this I'm going to use my previous frame. So I'm going to go one at a time to make sure I'm at the very start there. So I'm at the very start of the outro screen, which is great. I'm going to come all the way back here to annotations. This time under callouts, I'm going to use one. It has no box, has no shape. It just has plain text. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to drag it down onto track 2. And I'm going to drag it. I'm going to make this 15 seconds as well. So I'm just going to click and drag because it'll snap to the end. There we go. It's the same length. And as you can see, it's got ABC. Well, actually you can't because it's white text. So I'm just going to click on here. I'm going to double click to highlight it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come and I'm going to change the color from white to my red. There we go. Now I'm going to drag these handles. Now, one of the things I really do like about Camtasia when you're working on the canvas, so I drag down, when my center handles are centered vertically, it's going to give me a yellow line across. Or should have, or I need to move it, there we go. So that's how I know that it's centered vertically. Then click my right handle, I'm going to drag it along here. Just click and drag, there we go. So now my text is centered on that screen. I'm going to double click the letters to highlight the text and I'm just going to start typing. Well, that's certainly nowhere near enough space, so we're going to highlight all that. And I'm going to change my typeface probably to 48. There we go. IT help desk. There we go. And that's my intro screen, or my outro screen. So now at the end of my video, we're going to move into this. But I don't want it just to be a harsh sun appearance like that. So I'm going to add either a transition or a behavior. Anybody want to put in the chat section if they think I'm going to use a transition or a behavior? Let's see how many of you are still awake. All right, Beth is awake and she's been listening because you're right. I want to use a transition. So I'm going to come back to my transitions. And I can use a fade or fade through black. I'm just going to drop in a fade right here. And because I'm transitioning between two clips, you'll notice it actually put half the transition on the first clip and half the transition on the second clip. So when we put the transition at the beginning, you put it all on clip, but when you put it on to two adjacent clips like I just did, it splits them in half. Okay, Sandra, I saw your question. Just let me finish this and then I'll answer your question. Now, what that transition is going to do is it's going to fade between the video and the outro screen. But you're going to see what happens with the text. This text is still just going to appear. So what I need to do is I need to put that same transition onto my text layer as well. And now when I hit play, the text fades in as well and looks neater. And what I'm going to do at the very end, because again, if I just hit end, it just goes to black. I jump all the way to the end. So I'm going to put a fade through black down on my bottom one, and I'm going to use the regular fade at the top. And let's see how that looks. And it fades out gently to black. So I've added my outro screen. You notice that the outro screen is on the same track as the main video, and I've done that because that's how I'm going to get my transition to move between the two nicely. My text, or my text annotation is on top of the outro screen, so that layers on top. Like I said, it's like that set of transparencies. And then I added those transitions. So like I said, transitions are for moving from one clip to another, or to bring a whole clip in. Behaviors apply just to the annotation.
So, Rob?
Yes.
Can you, you've got a lot of possibilities for different tracks there. So are you saying you just really need 2 tracks, one for the video and one for transitions and things like that?
Actually, close. You're right, because I have a lot of options. So basically, Camtasia will just keep automatically adding tracks. The first time when you first open up Camtasia, it's going to give you track 1. It won't create track 2 until you drop something on it. I've got some video that ends up having 4 or 5 different tracks on it. So basically, it's the old thing about physics, like two objects cannot exist at the same time in the same place. Same thing for video. So if I need something to, if I need another, whether it's an annotation or a clip or a lower third or whatever, if I need that to occupy the same space, then it has to be at a different time. But if I need it to occupy at the same time, it needs to be on a different space, so that'll be the next track up. And just remember, each additional track, whatever's on that top track, will appear on top of the other. So if you put a shape on top of text, the shape appears and you won't see the text, so you just have to reverse them.
So if you had a lot of annotations at different points, they'd all be on the one track.
Correct.
But then if you wanted a picture, it would maybe go on like a picture of somebody. You could put that on a different track.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the nice thing is, if you put so let's say, again, you have a guest on your video, you don't have him or her on video, just their audio, and you hear them speaking. If you just drop that picture on track 2, there's no audio associated with that picture, but there's audio on track 1. The audio will still play underneath.
Okay.
Rob, a lot of people are asking questions about the outro screen, and they're wanting to know if you can create an outro to save it. So that do you create that as a separate project to save it to use for?
Absolutely.
You can add it to multiple videos.
I just saw Joe's question. Let's say you want to use the exact same annotation for all outros. Yes. So in this case, I built the outro screen, the blank outro screen, because for me, the annotations will change depending upon whatever thing I'm working on, but it's going to be the same all the time. Go into whatever graphic editor you want. So whether you have Photoshop or Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, right? And if it's going to be static, if it's going to stay the same, by all means, right? I like to say nobody works harder at being lazy than me. So the more that I can either automate or do once and just keep bringing it back in, absolutely. So that outro screen is a PNG file. You can use JPEG, you can use bitmap. I wouldn't suggest GIF, but PNGs. Just create it. Now the nice thing is most video is all going to be at the same resolution. Most of it is was it 1024 by 768, or high res is 1980 by 12 something. You will look it up online. So when you're creating that outro screen, you just create the graphic to be that size, and like I said, go online, look up the screen. But typically, if you go with let's say 1090 by 768, I think it is, it'll scale up quite nicely. So you save it. So I saved mine out. Here, let me pull up my Windows Explorer here. So I'm in OneDrive. Can you see my my Windows Explorer screen here?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I've got this folder called Training Materials for Camtasia Studio. Just so it'd all be in one place for this class, so I put them all in the folder. But I do have a specific library folder that I just dump everything in. So I created, here it is, video outro screen, 1920 by 1080.png. So I'm the one who named it. I did this in Photoshop, and I just saved it as a PNG graphic, and I made the name 1920 by 1080, and that's my outro screen. So when I bring in this as media, I just bring in that graphic.
So now you're going to have to do the next class on Photoshop and creating PNGs because whatever you're talking about, I don't know, maybe everybody else knows, but it's a little bit going over my head.
Sure.
So
yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yeah. And I have done graphic classes in the back, and I'm happy to do some more. So, but basically, PNG is like a JPEG or a bitmap image. It's a file format for graphics. It's a very common one. Camtasia reads them very easily. So, also if you go to there are places on the web where you can go and download for free and royalty free and free to download outro screens and different graphics that you can use for either an intro or an outro or even just for background if you'd like. So by all means, so Joe, your answer to your question is yes, you can, but you don't even have to make it as a project and import it. You can just create a graphic image, put as much as you can on the graphic, and then that way only the stuff that changes would you need to drop in an annotation for. Wilson said Snag is good for creating images. Absolutely it is. The other one I really like is, and I think everyone gets a license for it, is Adobe Spark. It's a very simple program to use. And you basically tell it what you're making and it sets up the file size. So we have lots of tools that are already available. Snagit, Photoshop, Paint, Word, PowerPoint, Snagit. There's lots of them out there. All right, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to hit save. And now I have saved my project. I've added my outro screen. I have created a transition in and out of the video. I have created a transition between the two clips, between the video itself and my outro screen graphic. With not very much work, I've made a lot of changes. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we don't have to scroll as much. Made a lot of changes to this video that's going to have a positive effect on the people who are watching it. If you're wondering, that's all the transition stuff that's showing up there. Okay, and then can I walk through how to cut something out of the middle of the video? Absolutely, because if you're doing a 2 or 3 hour lecture and you want to take a break, or you do take a break, now you got to get rid of stuff in the center. Very, very easy to do. So before I continue, just want to say if you need to cut something out of the middle of a video, that is also considered part of your bulk edits, and that you should do it first. So adding things like annotations and outro screens and behaviors and all that, that becomes your secondary or kind of your targeted edits. Bulk edits are your trims and your cuts. So in this case, I'm going to find an area. Oh, look, I got a big blank spot here and a big blank spot here. So starting a recording meeting, we're just going to pretend that, you know what, this is really boring and I don't need it. So I'm going to put my playhead at the start. And just like before when we snipped to do the trimming, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to split it. Now what I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to slide it to the next section. and select portion, and I'm going to snip it again, or split it. Now I've got 3 sections. So basically, I'm doing my split on either side of what I need to cut, and with the section I want to get rid of selected, I hit my delete key. But again, I now have this dead space right in the center. So I'm just going to click on this clip here. I'm going to click and I'm going to slide it right over. And I've just removed something out of the middle. Now the reason I said to do trimming from the middle as part of your bulkheads before doing anything else is because if I go all the way down here to where my outro screen is, now I've got that same space here. Now that's not a big deal. I can just click and drag these back to where they need to be, and that's all working. But the problem is, now I got my call out right here, which is not in the right spot. Now I can certainly click and move that to where it needs to be. Or, of course, if I hold down my shift key, let's look at the play out of the way. If I hold down my shift key, I can select more than one item at a time, and then as I move them around, the whole thing moves. But if I don't remember to do that, then I got to go back and try and find the right spot for all that. So again, trimming from the front, trimming from the end, and cutting out of the middle, that is part of your bulk edit, and that should be the first thing you edit. That's just basic best practice. That way, when you start dropping in your annotations, your callouts, and everything else, because you're dropping them at specific points, you don't have to go back and adjust them. Well, I got one more little thing I got to do on this here video. I'm actually going to. You can see I can resize this area. I want to click on here, and I want to actually extend track 1 because I want to take a look at my waveform. Oh, remember that's all these squiggly lines. I'm talking right at the beginning, so I have got this really nice transition. We go from black. Now, I actually have some audio right before this mark right here. I don't know if the system audio is coming across, but this is where my playhead is right now, which you can see is at the 1 second mark. I have some audio right in front of that I don't want. I need to get rid of that. So this is the next thing we do, which is working with audio. Now, I can do a whole class just on working with audio, so this is going to be very basic. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to zoom in as much as I can and drag it in. Okay. So as a matter of fact, right there is where I want this to start. So I don't want any audio right there. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split it. Select, now that's the section I want right there. Again, it's barely over a second in length, but that's fine. I've got a little bit of talking and I want to quiet that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up into my tool bin and go to Audio Effects. And I'm just going to take my fade out and drop it on there. I don't know if you can see it, but they've got a little line, little green angle line right there. And that's the audio from before, part that I don't want. Now I can just click and I'm going to drag it right down. There we go. Away. drag that down. I've got drag handles on my audio. So I drag them down from here. And I've got no waveform anymore. So now that's silent. So all that, if I only had about half a second of audio that I need to get rid of. So again, we bring all this back here. By the way, Control Z is my friend. So I want to get rid of this audio right here. So position my playhead, select the clip, and I'm going to split it. The reason I split it is because my audio changes. I only want to affect this portion. And if I didn't split it, and I brought the audio effects onto here, it would affect the entire audio. And I only want this section. And like I said before, even though I split it, it will have zero effect visually on the video. So I'm going to go, for my audio effects, I'm going to go to fade out and just drag it on that clip. And I've got these handles right here. It's hard to see because it's got that kind of turquoise box from the transition. So, oh, let's do this. I'm going to get rid of my transition just for a sec so it's easier to see. Okay. Now, we'll put that transition back in. But you can see when I dropped in that fade out audio effect onto this section, this is the way, you know, when you're listening to music at the end of a song, it kind of fades out. Well, that's a fade out. So that's what I'm doing here, but I want to fade it out completely. So it gives me these handles, and I can actually adjust the degree to which it fades out. The amount of time it takes to fade out. In this case, I'm going to drag it all the way down the bottom and then get rid of all that audio. So it's still there, but the effect has basically muted that section of audio. And of course, I can come back here and I can just drop my fade back in here, and we're just going to do that. So that's my audio. Again, you can fade that audio out, mute it. Just go ahead and split that first. So what I'm left with now is my audio now, or my whole video. I'm going to change this so I can take a look at the whole thing. So there's my video. It has my lower third up here, which is on the same track as my annotation. My first annotation, my call out. I've got some sections on my video now. So the first section, which I really can't, it's too minute to be able to select, is where I split that so I could have cleaner audio. We split here and here so I could get rid of that middle section. Then at the end, of course, I have my outro screen with the text annotation on top, and I have my final video. So once again, I did not do very much. I trimmed beginning and the end. In this case, we pretended we had a section in the middle to get rid of, so I trimmed that out. We dropped in an annotation. We applied a transition between the clips, and we added a behavior to the annotations. And we dropped in a lower third. Now with that, I'm going to hit save again because that's what we do. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you how to export the final MP4, and then we're going to go back because I know Sandra has a question, and also Beth, I think you're the one who asked about using Camtasia to record as well, and you absolutely can do that, so I want to cover that as well. So let's go ahead and export this video. So like I said, this is a project. It's a TSC PROJ file, and all you need to know about that is it means that you can't put it anywhere, can't do anything with it. We need to export the final MP4 as a single file. So the way we do that is we're going to come up to this share menu option in the top. And I'm going to go to local file. then here's what I do, and I would suggest you to make the same choices, which is I'm going to create an MP4 only up to 1080p, so that's a high definition video. Okay. So we're going to go to Share, and we're going to select MP4 only up to 1080p. We're going to hit Next. Now, it will not automatically put it in the same folder that you created the project in. So we're going to give it a name, and we're going to find, all right, we're going to go to OneDrive. I'm going to save it, my training materials, Camtasia Studio, basic video editing. I'm going to leave it as trimming sample and hit save. And I'm going to hit finish. While I was doing that, I'm going to look at the chat and answer some questions here. Let's go back, make sure I got them. I want to use video. I want to video my working with web pages in real time, then add annotation. Yes, we're going to do it right now. So Sandra, hold on to that, because that answers Beth's question too about recording the screen at the same time. Mishi, is there a cheat sheet somewhere that can be used while doing some of these functions? Yes. So go to techsmith.com. So TechSmith is the name of the company that provides the software, and we do have a site license, so all staff, all faculty can have a copy of it, but you can also register. So register on their website, and they have a full library of tutorial videos. They have some really, really good, I like to refer to them as idea videos. So they have a lot of how-tos, but a lot of them are, hey, so you want to add in, or you want to edit one of the default lower thirds. So they have a whole bunch of like really short videos to watch that are really worthwhile. There's also another person, and I'll put his name here. His name is Lon Taylor. Look him up on YouTube. He does a lot of phenomenal videos on YouTube for two things, for Camtasia Studio and PowerPoint. And he's got a lot of it. He comes out with at least one video a week. He's absolutely worthwhile following. Lon Taylor. Wilson asks, can Camtasia easily work with MOV files from iPhone? It sure can. Now, even better is, and I wasn't expecting to mention this in today's, but since you bring it up, I will. If you go to the TechSmith site, actually on your iPhone or iPad, go to the Apple Store, and they have, so TechSmith actually has some iPhone and, well, presumably for Android as well, but they have some iOS apps. One of them is Capture. So yes, by the way, you can use your MOV files. Camtasia has no problem reading those. I use them as well. But the Capture app from TechSmith allows you to do screen recordings of your iPhone. So I've got a couple of videos on the web for how to use Office Lens, which is a really cool little app from Microsoft. And I use TechSmith's Capture. And if you use TechSmith's Capture app on your iOS device, you log into your account. This is why you want to set up in your account. It will then automatically drop the capture into your project on screen. And then, so yeah, so from there, of course, once you put in, copy your MOV. But if you've like taken video, so you don't want to do screen capture, but you've taken video with your iOS device or Android device, just save it up to OneDrive. Install the OneDrive app, save it to your OneDrive account, and then from Camtasia, you can go ahead and import that. It is not the same capture that many people use in D2L. That is, no, they're two separate applications. All right, so after all that and all those questions, it's still rendering the video, and I'm at 54%. So if you don't mind, I'm going to assume that you all believe me when I tell you that if I let this run for another 5 or 10 minutes, it'll actually finish and create an MP4 file. So if you're okay at that, I'm just going to go ahead and hit cancel. We'll pretend that it, yes, I'm sure I want to cancel, because sitting on a online class watching me render video is the digital equivalent of watching paint dry or grass grow. So we've got our MP4. Now, once I have that MP4, it'll be the final one. That is what I can upload to D2L. I can upload it to a YouTube account or Vimeo, or share it out amongst people. But that's the final step, is to share as an MP4 only, and then save it as that MP4, and you're good to go. Depending upon, so this was a 30-minute video with the outro screen. It's 29 minutes, 55 seconds, so we will call it 30 minutes. It's a 30-minute video. I was talking for what, probably 5, 6, 7 minutes. It's probably going to be another 4 or 5, so about 10 minutes. So that's about right. It'll be anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to create a 30-minute video. Now, Beth, you and others were asking about using the record, and I think it was Sandra, you're asking about, yeah, working with web pages in real time. All right, so I'm going to open up Microsoft Edge. So if I wanted to say, talk about Microsoft Forms, how's that? I'm going to come here. I think I'll go back to Camtasia really fast. At this point, I'm going to save my project. I'm going to create a new project just so I don't sully this one. So I'm back. I got a brand new project. And we're going to talk about Microsoft Forms really quickly. And I want to be able to work with something on my screen. So again, whether I'm working with an application or a web page or whatever I want to do, I'm going to hit my record button. And once I hit record, I can adjust the size of this. Of course, I can also just come down here and say lock to the application. So it's going to bring it to the same size as my Microsoft Edge. Now I'm going to slide this up a little bit so you can see it. So recording area, that's where under screen on, I just said lock to the application. Camera on. This is my webcam. So if you want to record yourself talking, so you have a little picture of yourself while you're showing what's on the screen, you can do that. I'm going to turn my camera off because I don't need to record my camera. If you want to do a voiceover, so right now as I'm talking, you can see the audio status bar moving. You see the little green bar flickering from left to right. Now, some of the videos, or actually a lot of the videos I do, I don't talk. There's some, I just put a music track on top so I can turn my microphone off. Turn my microphone off now, turn back on. System audio. Now, if you're on the web somewhere and it's playing music or playing audio and you want to record that as well, or if there's some kind of audio track in the software that you're using, just again, please be careful of copyright, because you can run into some problems there. But you can turn your system audio on or off. And once you're ready, you hit the record button, and it's going to count you down from 3. Okay, there we go. So now I'm recording, and if you see on the edge of my Edge window, little corners, it's green, this blinking green. That's kind of my visual indicator that it's recording. So anything that's showing up in that area will record, not just the application. So if I get one of those little annoying Outlook email pop-up messages, if any of that is within that area, they'll get recorded as well. So you want to make sure, of course, that you are turning off any pop-up notifications just to avoid having that interfere with your recordings. But yeah, as I'm talking right now, it is recording. And then once I'm done, I just hit F10. And it's going to bring me back to Camtasia. It's automatically going to put the screen recording in my media bin and drop it onto track 1. Now, because I didn't actually have my audio recording, I said don't record my microphone. You can see that there's no audio track. It's silent. There's no waveform here. But that's all there is to it. And then again, now I've recorded it. So as you're working real time, you can drop in your annotations, intros, outros. If you want to put in anything on top, if you want to layer other pictures on top, whatever you want to do. But that's how you get your basic recording. So some people want to, they just want to record their lecture. They don't want to stream it and record it while they're streaming. They just want to record it for later playback. That's how you do it. You can do it all from within Camtasia Studio using that record feature. If you are running WebEx, of course, it records MP4s for you. If you're running Zoom, it will do that as well. Frankly, almost any application will let you record that before. Even the software that came with your webcam. So however you get your video is up to you. Whatever kind of video you want to get, up to you. Camtasia Studio will handle all of it. And that is the end of our session. So hopefully this is helpful.
Quick question.
Yeah, by all means, I'm going to say, start peppering me with questions.
I tried videoing the other day and there was this little tiny thumbnail of me in the corner, but if I wanted a bigger picture of me on there, is there any way to resize that?
Absolutely. There sure is. Okay. I'm going to delete that and get this on my bin. I'm going to head back over. Oops. I'm going to take my, this time around, we're going to add my camera. There we go. Countdown 3, 2, 1. All right, so now I'm talking, I'm waving my hands, I'm making it a lot more interesting because I've got gestures instead of just showing Microsoft Edge, right? But it's recording my camera at the same time. Recording, drop it in here. And see, you down here, right? So you got the little thumbnail. I can just, whoops. Control Z. Edit both. I'm going to select, you'll notice I just got 2 tracks. So it's recorded the video, the main thing, but it's recorded my camera on a separate track. So as long as that's recorded, then I can just grab these resize handles and bring it up here.
Okay.
Because for some reason people, might want to see a bigger picture of me. Frankly, I'm more the,
No, I just want.
I look better when I'm that size.
Yeah, I couldn't see whether I was frowning or anything in the video because it was tiny. That I just wanted to check it, but I couldn't make it bigger.
Absolutely, and also, again, it shows up in the lower right. But if you want to put it up anywhere else on screen,
okay,
you can do as well.
Okay, so this looks like it basically is the way when you record with a PowerPoint with the video, right? I mean, you could do this. It seems like it functions the same way. Is that true?
I think so. I played with the recording in PowerPoint. I'm not a PowerPoint fan, to put it mildly. So I haven't heard that much. I played with the recording a couple years ago when somebody asked me a question about it, but I think it is.
Okay. I have another quick question too. So sure. The reason I asked about the capture in D2L is that I have an issue. This looks a lot better, right? Because I've been trying to use capture with D2L, But every time I try and share my screen, I get that, I don't know how to even explain it, but like that Morton Salt image where it goes back and back and back and back, like it's a picture within a picture within a picture within a picture. And I can't get rid of it. And I've tried to work with Rico, and he doesn't know how to get rid of it or whatever. Is this going to do that? Or is that not tend to be a problem that happens with this? Because I can't figure out why it happens with the other one.
So when that happens, it's happened to me on a couple WebEx sessions where they managed to log in there twice to the WebEx session, and then it just basically kept repeating the camera capture. So once I turned off their webcam, it stopped doing that. That would be my guess. I don't know enough about capture. I don't even know enough about D2L to be perfectly candid, but that sounds like when you get the kind of that infinite loop, that nested picture in a picture, that typically is the problem, is that there's that loop, and that's often the cause is somehow it thinks that you're in there twice, even though you're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that just from like you have to have an external webcam or something? You can't use the webcam in your computer. I know this is, I shouldn't ask this question right now because it's too far off.
It's possible. Actually, I only use the webcam in my laptop.
Okay. Well, then I'll just use this instead and forget about stupid caption.
No, I do like Camtasia. When I first started using Camtasia Studio about 10 years ago, it was nowhere near as powerful as it was. It was just some really basic stuff, but over the last few years, they've really come a long way, and it's now pretty much the de facto standard for doing this kind of video editing. I wouldn't create it, I wouldn't do any cinematography. I wouldn't try and build a movie in Camtasia Studio, but for doing this kind of recording and editing, yeah, I'm a big fan. I think I saw some other stuff pop up in chat. Let me take a look. Wilson, for student accessibility to your videos, do you recommend streaming them through a private YouTube or Vimeo account? Is that helpful or necessary? I do everything on YouTube. I've got a private, a semi-private YouTube channel, Wilson. And all the videos I upload, I set to unlisted. So you have three choices when you upload a video to YouTube. You can make it public, you can make it private, or you can make it unlisted. Unlisted is basically you can't find it, but I can give you the link. Private is you need to specifically tell or give people specific permissions to access the video. So I just, like I said, I just create a YouTube channel and mark all the stuff as unlisted.
Yeah, if I could share what's behind that question is I noticed that the K through 12 teachers, when they went remote, a lot of them were loading videos asynchronously, and then students could watch the 10-minute lesson, and almost always it was through a YouTube kind of platform. So, I mean, they probably went through something like this to do the video. They're clean, they're edited, they're sharp. Sometimes they were late because they would say, hey, it's still uploading. Give it 30 more minutes, you'll see it. But almost always it came to us through YouTube, through some private, URL, right? So only the kids were getting to it. So it seemed to me that maybe that's just more widely accessible than loading a whole video for them to play, or sometimes even have to download, right? Depending on.
Oh, absolutely. And kids today, and Beth, I've made more comments, made more statements that make me feel old, and I didn't recognize until you pointed it out earlier on. So thanks for that, Beth. But kids
You're
today,
welcome anytime.
kids today, they all have some kind of device, and every device now has YouTube on it natively anyway. So, that's what I've done for my kids. That they've asked for some help on some stuff, and I just said, no, I'll create a video and I'll just dump it onto a different YouTube channel for them and mark it as unlisted.
Okay, I hate to sound like an old person too, but do you have to pay for a private YouTube channel or Vimeo channel, or is that?
Nope.
No? Okay.
No, it's all free because Google makes their money off of people, subscribing and stuff. You do not have to pay to put anything up on YouTube.
And I think we can still embed it in D2L. It would just
Yep.
be streaming in that way, right? As opposed to
That's right. Yep.
uploading the whole however many megs of your video. Usually the videos I upload are not very long, but if we're talking about lots of us putting our lectures up there, then they're going to be longer, right? So I don't know what's cumbersome and what's not. It's all pretty new to me, so yeah.
They can get big fast. So one of the things I kind of gloss over at the very beginning when we talked about the video length, the first one, remember, we went from 42 minutes down to 29. There was another thing called FPS, frames per second. That's the frame rate. We mentioned a little bit about frame rate. So frame rate just means in 1 second, how many of those still pictures are stitched together. So this, as you can see by default, I've set to 30 frames per second. As we know, a still picture has a file size to it. So 30 would be 30 times the amount. I did a video for an organization that I belonged to a couple weeks ago. Didn't pay attention, and I recorded it in 4K at 60 frames per second. The video looked beautiful, but a 2-minute video was 700 megabytes. I mean, it was huge. So I had to kind of go back and reshoot it. So the higher your frame rate just means the more number of, or a larger number of still images that are in that clip, in that second. So 60 frames per second has twice as many stills as 30 frames per second. So even though 60 frames looks way better, it's clean, it's nice, it's a beautiful look, but it's going to be a huge file size. 720p, which is the resolution, number of pixels in the images, versus 1080. That's almost half. So you go 1080, 4K, 1080. I mean, that's just a super high file size. So you have to strike a balance, and the balance is going to be something that you guys figure out for yourselves. What looks best? You can make it really high res and high frame rate at 60 frames per second. It's going to look beautiful, but it's going to be a bear to upload to YouTube. And if your students are watching on a less than great bandwidth on their home internet, there might be some buffering and it might pause for a while. So there comes a point where you just have to say, I've made this too good. I need to drop it down a little bit. It probably won't be noticeable, but it will be easily accessed by the students. So typically, like I said, 1080, 30 frames per second, which is kind of the default in Camtasia, so you don't even really need to change anything, is going to be your best bet. And hopefully some of that made sense.
So I had a question about Snagit, and so I'd only been using Snagit, and obviously not editing, and we don't have an editing feature for that, do we?
Not really, no. So Snagit has something come with it called Snagit Studio,
Right.
which is really good for, like, I use it sometimes for editing stills. So like I'll take a screenshot and then I can drop in arrows and other annotations. And Snagit does record video and does a nice job. As a matter of fact, because they're the same company, they're both from TechSmith, it's the same recording engine in Camtasia Studio as it is in Snagit. But the Snagit editor is much simpler to use, but it's a lot less functional. So, now that you're familiar with the Camtasia Studio interface, you got your 4 parts, right? You got your media bin, your tool bin, you've got your canvas, you have your properties panel, and then your timeline. Now that you know how those all kind of work together, I would say just get comfortable working inside Camtasia Studio because you have a lot more options, and it's really not that difficult once you kind of get a hang of it. I'd say the hardest part is just remembering where some of the things are. Again, difference between a transition and a behavior. And there's other stuff we didn't cover today. And then maybe I might do maybe not an advanced class, but maybe kind of a beyond the basics where we cover animations and voiceovers and music tracks.
Okay, yeah, so it looks like Camtasia just takes the basic part of Snagit and then adds all those other features. So if they're the same thing there in terms of recording the video, if you have Snagit videos that you've already recorded, you could pull them into Camtasia and
Absolutely.
edit. Yeah,
Yep.
okay, so that makes sense.
Yep.
I had one more question about this what was it? The thing that you said that you could record on iPhones?
Oh, TechSmith Capture. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have, so you can download the app for that? Do we have an account with TechSmith?
Yes.
Or do you have to create a new, okay. So you would just sign in.
Oh, I'm sorry. So once you download the app, no, you'll need to create your own,
Okay.
it's a free account.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, you set up your own free account. It even gives you, I forget the name of, they've got a cloud storage thing as well. The free one just doesn't give you enough space, so I don't even bother remembering the name of it. But there are additional assets that you can download for free. So there are some music tracks that you can download for free. There are some extra types of callouts and other items that you can download once you're a registered member. But the registration is free. And that's what that allows you to log in on both Camtasia on your computer as well as the app on your phone. And they've got a couple of really neat little iPhone apps.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And I see another question about YouTube and involving other departments. I can neither confirm nor deny that I may or may not have forgotten to get anyone's permission before I set up the YouTube channel, but that's just me, so take that for what you will. Yeah, okay, Carol, yeah, you named it, yeah. You guys have had your channel as well. Joe, you asked, do I use a good mic? For the stuff I do and don't take this the wrong way, but the stuff I do for the university, I don't. I just have a headset. It's a decent headset, but that's all I typically use. But most of the videos that I create are typically between 3 and 6 minutes in length. So I don't even talk on my videos. I actually just record the screen, and then I just drop in a music track on top just for something to listen to. That way, my voice isn't distracting, and that way, if I need to extend part of the screen to, I need to drop in an annotation and extend it. I don't have to worry about me talking past or at a point past the annotation. So the annotation isn't talking about one thing and I'm already talking about something else. Can you add a music file on track 2 at the beginning of a video? Absolutely, you sure can. So I'm going to come back up to my library and remember when we first came to the library, we went at the lower thirds. It even comes with certain music tracks. And there's a bunch of them there. There's probably 2 or 3 in a variety of different genres. So upbeat, kind of rock, folksy, happy, corporate. So what you can do is you can just double click on any of those. And get a preview. And if that's one you want, you can just click and drag it onto whatever track you want. Now, in this case, the track itself is 2 minutes and 31 seconds, but our video is only 12 seconds. So what I don't want to do is have a 2-minute, see up here, I don't want a 2.5-minute video where 2 minutes and 20 seconds is nothing but music. So again, I'm going to have my my music tracks have selected. I'm going to put the playhead right here near the end. And I'm going to split. So I can split my music track. Get rid of the stuff to the right. And again, I can come back, and if I don't want that harsh ending to it, I just go my audio and I can fade out my music track. Then as it gets closer to the end, it gets quieter and quieter and fades out to silence. And you can also change the volume. So if you want to have music playing behind, so if you're still talking, but you still want music kind of behind your voice, you can just click and drag the bar that's level, and now you've reduced the volume so you can still speak over it. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with the audio.
You still have to be careful with that the same way you would with video clips, right? Because if you use the music that comes with Camtasia, you're good, but you can't like just put Bob Dylan on there because then you're filing copyrights, right?
And you're also going to confuse the hell out of your students because none of them are going to know who Bob Dylan is. But
there you go.
Yes, absolutely. So any creative material is by default protected by copyright. So whoever the creator of that media is, whether it's artwork, whether it's video, whether it's music, whatever, has to get their permission. But there are sites out there, and like I said, if you do sign up for the free TechSmith account, they have a library of additional assets, most of which cost money, but they do sell several free ones. And there's other, if you just do a Google search for free and royalty-free music, there's some good stuff out there. Not great, but some pretty good stuff.